You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. I like to mix it up a little bit in the beginning every now and then, Blue Gal, to
and
let
then
people
I just
know.
delete it.
Well, to let people know this is actually live. This is not recorded.
We are actually recording it this week.
Yeah, this is not a patched together, pasted together, best of show.
Not done by AI.
No. There is a PayPal button at our website. Or you can mail us a letter and or contribution, which you really should, at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for the week of August 11th, 2023. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance in Springfield, Illinois, where the Illinois State Fair butter cow display has been freshly squeegeed by our governor. It's The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal. Yeah, JB getting it done.
Speaking of AI podcast, I did, for shits and giggles, generate an AI script for us this week.
Really?
Just to see what would happen.
How'd we do?
Here's how. I'll just start reading it, and you tell me when to stop. Bracket, opening music, close bracket. Host one. Host one. Welcome back to the Professional Left podcast, where we discuss politics, culture, and all things progressive. I'm host one.
Wow.
And I'm host two. We've got a lot to cover today, so let's dive right in.
Wait a minute.
Today
how come you get to be host one? I'm host one. I don't want to be host two. Jesus. Yeah, I was thinking about the same thing about if I were to ask the AI creature to do a no fair remembering stuff, I think it would kill it, because there is so much that we do that is pulled straight from our archives, and it doesn't tell a linear story. There's usually a zig and a zag and a remembrance of this and a relationship to that is very hard to replicate, because it is the product of our wandering imaginations.
Right. And I think too, and I worry about this a little bit. I think we depend a lot on having long-term devoted listeners who understand our shorthand sometimes.
Yes, that's true.
And brand new listeners to this podcast, welcome if you're a brand new listener.
Yes.
We want new listeners, and we're glad to have you. This is a conversation between two married people.
Right.
And we do have a script, and we do have list of things that we are going to cover because we want to get through this in an hour for you. But it is, as we have said many times, it is a continuation of a conversation we are having 7 days a week.
Right.
And so that's just the way I don't think AI can generate that sort of thing. I just don't think they can.
No.
At least anyway.
And this is our anniversary month. So
yes, happy anniversary, Driftglass.
Yeah,
12 years.
12 years.
12 happy years of marriage.
Although podcasting for 13 years, which is some people
true.
think that's weird. I don't think it's weird at all.
Podcasting. I know.
Yeah,
I know.
We did a lot of without benefit of clergy. We were podcasting just shamelessly. But as long-term listeners know, and new listeners might be interested to hear, this was prompted this whole Megillah, this 735 episode behemoth that's been rolling along since the Obama administration, was prompted by people at a meetup with fellow liberals in Chicago, and we suddenly noticed that everybody else was being quiet and listening to us, which is weird.
And that was at more than one meetup. We would have meetups of bloggers, and noticed that you and I would talk to one another, and everyone else was just stop and listen to us.
Quiet, and not in like, Jesus, I wish they'd shut up. Because they would have told us, believe me,
these
were
told
New York.
Us, Jesus, just shut up.
Yeah,
yes.
these were New York friends, and they would have no trouble telling us to shut up.
Right.
And then we were asked a couple of times, why aren't you two on the radio?
Why aren't you two on the radio?
Which is,
and again, when someone says something to me for the third time, that's when I pay attention. Say, okay, I have to take action. So, now, we took action on that.
FYI, the question of why aren't liberal voices on the radio is a much larger question that we tackle every week.
Driftglass takes that on fairly often. Yes.
Yeah. But
just so you know, we know it's summer vacation for a lot of podcasters. Back to school has already started in some areas. One of my California colleagues was telling me back to school has already started in her area.
Yep.
Yeah. we will be next weekend taking one of the children back to college.
Yes.
And I wanted to just tell a little story. We had breakfast with one of our listeners. If you come into Springfield, take us out to breakfast.
Yeah.
We would love to do that. Sure. And Jerome took us out to breakfast, which was very nice. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about how he had taken a road trip with his sister.
Right.
And he said, I want you to listen to this podcast because I think you'd like it.
No, by the way, just to interrupt, that's the way you sell this podcast. Get them trapped in a car. They can't leave.
Trap them in a car and put it on. Right.
Right. Roll the windows up. Don't let them out. Don't let them out until they've listened to 4 or 5 episodes. Just my 2 cents.
But it was 4th of July weekend, and that was when we had our power outage, and we were unable to record a podcast. And Jerome said to his sister, I'm telling you, if they don't have a new podcast up on Thursday, it has to have been an act of God that prevented them from podcasting.
That's true.
And it turned out, yes, it was an act of God. Mm-hmm. And we had another act of God this week.
We did.
We had flash flooding yesterday in Springfield. And it was pretty severe. It canceled my knitting afternoon.
Yeah, it was.
So
intense.
That's how bad it was. I couldn't knit with my girlfriend because
I did some errands today with middle child, checking a lot of stuff off the list. And everywhere I went to, every cashier or everybody I interacted with had a story about flooding this week. Like serious, like 3.5, 4 inches fell in our area in just a few hours.
Yep.
Sewers can't. When I was driving around yesterday before it got really, really bad, water was shooting out of the sewers.
And it was one of those August cold rains, which always have the threat of hail with them. So we were really concerned about the safety of the car and how things were in the basement and so forth. So
I talked to the mayor of Jerome. I happened to run into him, who is at meetings I go to, and he also works at the grocery store. That's the kind of town we're in. But he was like, the area around our place was just wrecked. There were like 18 inches of standing water, and because Jerome was like sloped down from Springfield, so water runoff. There's a bike shop in town that has a river that just goes straight through it because it's shitty grading. Anyway, that's downtown.
I mean, this is nothing compared to what Maui is having to deal with, and our thoughts are with them.
Yeah.
How horrible those fires were, and we're just so sad about that. But things are happening on the earth right now that need addressing, and it's hard to stay calm about it. But
and one young man I interacted with today at a cashier reminded me that just a few weeks ago there was a dust storm on the highway.
Right.
That caused a massive pileup with fatalities because of the incredible dry weather and drought.
Lack of rain in June. Yeah. So, caused a major car accident. Yeah.
Anyway.
We're going to start with a letter from one of our listeners, Driftglass. This is from, let me see. I'll just call him RL.
Okay.
DG and BG, I've been listening to your podcast for years and have been meaning to send a contribution. Anyway, I finally stopped procrastinating and am sending you a check. I really enjoyed the podcast this week on Fox News. Great job. That was one of our No Fair Remembering Stuff podcasts. A little about me. I retired a few years ago, and we moved from Northern Virginia to Delaware. I follow Blue Gal on Twitter, and she follows me. Well, I'm glad I follow you back. If I don't follow you back on any social media, feel free to drop us an email. I'm happy to follow back people. I actually worked at Fox News, Washington, D.C. on weekends for 9 years.
What?
Yeah. And this goes back to our podcast was about Outfoxed, which is a documentary that came out in the 90s. And they were talking about Fox News Washington being a profitable center for Fox, and that everyone at Fox Washington thought, oh, they're going to leave us alone because we make money. And that turned out not to be the case long term, right?
Nope.
So I worked there from 1996 until 2005. It was actually a fun time, with the studio crew being mostly liberals and most of the newsroom staff being decent folks. Tony Snow, the host of Fox News Sunday, was actually a great guy. We disagreed politically, but he wasn't a right-wing wacko like they have on the air today. They have really changed since Obama was elected. Yeah, I wonder why that would be, to what you see there today. I served as stage manager for one show when Sean Hannity came to D.C. What a pompous jerk. Ditto for O'Reilly and Limbaugh, who were guests on the show once. Pompous and really full of themselves. I got to meet some famous people there, including Joe Biden. Anyway, I wanted you to know I really agreed with your characterization of Fox News today.
Yeah.
And then he had a personal note for you, Driftglass. Back in 1971, I worked at a TV station in Philadelphia and saved up 4 weeks of leave. I decided to drive across the country in my VW Beetle. I planned to visit Chicago, and looking on my road map, I saw that Springfield was not too far. I'm a huge Lincoln fan growing up, so I headed there instead of Chicago. I got to see Lincoln's house at New Salem and visited his grave at the cemetery. So whenever Driftglass mentions Springfield on the podcast, it brings back some great memories of my trip. Keep up the great work on the podcast as well as at Crooks and Liars. Crooks and Liars sounds like the entire Trump administration. Well, yeah, it kind of does, doesn't it? All the best to you and your family, RL. Thank you very much for that letter.
That's wonderful.
And your background at Fox News Washington, which, again, jibes very much with what the documentary was talking about, and the people from Fox News Washington who were on that documentary saying, you know, we were all figuring they'd leave us alone. We were not part of the, you know, Rupert Murdoch, right-wing, Roger Ailes tribe.
Machine.
We just weren't part of that. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, yes, you're going to be part of that if you want to keep getting paid. You know, that's what happened.
Then came the memos, then came the directives, then came
some firings, and then it was off to the races. Yeah.
But that point of that podcast was more than 20 years ago that documentary came out. Or almost exactly 20 years ago. Yeah. So when you hear people just acting shocked that Fox News in the last 3 or 4 years, the last 5 or 6 years, they're lying to you. And either they're just stupid or they know they're lying. Or they were on Fox for the last 17 years and they'd rather not talk about the fact that they caused this problem. Speaking of the Obama administration.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like to write about David Brooks. I really don't. I've written all there is to know about David Brooks, and I've tried to take a vacation from David Brooks, and I have successfully almost, until the Bulwark's Mona Charen decided to weigh in on critiquing a David Brooks column without getting my permission to do so. I think it's pretty.
There are some properties, aren't there?
Yeah.
Like 10 Grain.
10 Grain owns Peggy Noonan.
He owns Peggy Noonan. And you own David Brooks. You really do. Brooks. Yeah.
And I used to own Andrew Sullivan before he just dropped out of sight, and a few other properties that are you know, common. And there were long stretches there where people really were asking, why the hell are you talking about David Brooks? And then he would pop off with something insane, or he would just lie and like, oh, that's why, because he was ubiquitous back not so many years ago. He was everywhere. He was the voice of serious conservatism. And as I've said before, the right-wing lunacy cannot exist without someone like David Brooks. Because David Brooks' job is to go to the serious, legitimate, centrist, whatever media and tell them and their listeners and readers that there's nothing to worry about, that the Republican Party isn't really crazy. I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative, and they're not crazy at all. The people they're fringes, but the left has it too, so don't worry about it. That's his whole job. So then Mona Charen decided she would weigh in because she's one of those bulwark people. And I thought, oh, crap. So I read through her entire thing, and it was all about David Brooks tries to plumb the depths of the MAGA mind. And I'll write about that, and I'll publish it. It'll be great. But what I did notice was a repeating pattern that I've seen. I'm sure you've seen it too. That's been going on for 8 years now, which is the complete eradication of all memory of the Obama administration. It's all gone.
Yep.
Because it's vanished from the minds of the national punditocracy. Because every time a centrist, center-left, center-right, I don't want to be tribal, bulwark, never Trumper, pundit, blah, 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 proposes some sort of solution, floats some sort of idea that, of course, we liberals have to do it because they understand perfectly well the base is never going to change. So we liberals need to, quit waving our arms around and quit using words like Latinx, because everyone in Ohio voted for Donald Trump because somebody said Latinx. Or, some kid on a campus somewhere yelled at a Nazi, so we're a bunch of canceling. So here's all the things liberals must do to calm down the insane right. And if you go down the list, it's a long list, and it involves us being responsible for their shitty behavior. And there is this common belief, this drumbeat on the right and in the Never Trump camp and in the pundit world, a common article of faith that since Republicans cannot be redeemed, since their minds can't be changed, since nothing can be done, it's up to us on the left, us stupid liberals, us dirty hippies, to find some way to modify our behavior to be responsible for their bad behavior, to somehow calm their troubled minds. And just as a reminder, in case I haven't repeated it often enough, we did all that. It was the Clinton administration. It was the Obama administration. We gave them lots of stuff that they said they wanted. All the things Clinton did, all the things that I was horrified by, I objected to, but kicked a bunch of people off welfare, made gay people uncomfortable, and passed Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and balanced the fucking budget and created a budget surplus and 20 million new jobs. That's a whole bunch of stuff that was always on the Republican books, and they impeached his ass for it. They hunted him like an animal so they could find a reason to stick Ken Starr up his ass and then tried to impeach him. Barack Obama inherited their fucking mess. We hired him to clean up their fucking mess. And from day one, they tried to stop him. They tried to break him. They filibustered him. He didn't pass the health care bill I wanted or that you wanted. He passed the American Enterprise Institute health care bill that Republicans had proposed. And what did they say about it? They say, thank you, that's great, let's meet in the middle. They said, oh, no, there's a death panel in there. He wants to kill your sainted white grandma because that black man is not even from this country. And they spent 8 years in a hysterical, fever-pitched, racist primal scream as Barack Obama tried to be as calm and as accommodating and as reasonable as possible. So
and
the problem,
over the top ethical, so that they couldn't do that to him.
Yeah. I forget who it was who said Barack Obama spent 8 years walking on eggshells or walking on ice, and he did. Yeah. And there was a lot of things he did that I objected to. There were a lot of things he did that I wish he had done harder. My dear friend Harlan Ellison, for a few years, I was his man in Chicago, and he used to tell me on the phone when we talked, which I'm kind of bragging. I'm doing a little bragging. That's okay. He's dead, so he can't contradict me. So, here's all the advice I gave to Harlan. But he was like, I like Barack Obama. He's a very nice guy. He's a very reasonable guy. And like in a healthy country, that'd be great. But what we need now is some son of a bitch to break their back.
And throw elbows.
Throw elbows. And he can't do it. He's not programmed to do that. He's programmed to find the middle, find the center, find some way to accommodate as if it were Springfield. And he were still in the state legislature, which he is not. And so we've been through this already. We've tried this already. And since we've already tried it twice and it only got worse, I'm not willing to extend to the Republican base or all these assholes giving us advice one iota of what's the word I'm looking for?
An inch of grace.
Reasonable doubt. An inch of grace. No reasonable doubt. No, we've tried it. We've tried it your way over and over again. We have compromised. We've given shit up. We've kept our mouth shut. We've elected people that were reasonable, and none of it fucking worked. In fact, it only got worse. And it only got worse because you people will not take Fox News out behind the woodshed and bury it. Because you people depended on Fox News to win fucking elections. You built a fucking monster. And then you lost control of the monster. And now you're looking at us like, well, maybe if you were nicer to them, maybe if you just be more accommodating. Fuck you. You lay down in front of that train. You sacrifice yourself because this is your goddamn mess. And you should be on your knees thanking us, thanking the fucking liberals for saving this country from Donald fucking Trump, who was your responsibility, not ours. End of speech.
Yeah. Mitch McConnell.
Yeah.
This is better taken care of in the courts.
Right.
Trump is better taken care of in the courts.
Until it reaches the courts.
And then, they can't arrest me. I was already impeached for this.
And that sort of thing relies on us good-hearted liberals going, but he said, no. Stop it. Stop pretending these people are anything other than heartless, sadistic fucking Nazis. They're all in on it. And anybody who isn't on your side, unequivocally, like, I will back the Democratic Party to the hilt. Whoever they put up is my guy. If that person's not willing to say that, if they want to play this, I don't want to be tribal. I want to be in the middle. I don't want to center left and center right. We can find reasons. And that's what gets me back to the Mona Charen thing I was going to write about. Because you know, she takes 21 paragraphs and kicks a lot of liberals in the balls.
Absolutely.
On the way there.
You read that to me.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it.
she fucking hates us. These people spent their professional lives getting paid to hate us. They still do. And so what they've had to do is, instead of saying liberals are responsible for all of the problems that ever happened, they've had to modify themselves. It's very awkward to say that Donald Trump's a monster and liberals are responsible for all of the problems that have ever occurred. And I'm not willing to grant them a fucking inch. You want to be my ally?
They're going to grand bargain our retirement.
Right.
The minute they get reasonable Republicans back into office.
Yeah. And so to my dear liberal friends who scold me about being nicer to our allies, it's like being nicer to Republicans. Why can't you just accept? Look, why doesn't this work both ways?
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't lose my party. My party's fine. Yeah. My party's doing great. My party just kicked ass in Ohio. They're the ones who lost their fucking party for reasons we warned them about. And now they're in our fucking
Driftglass, this is where I want to push back on you a little bit. Because
let's take a breath.
You take a breath and I want to talk about Laura Ingraham last night.
Why? Why must you do this to me?
First of all, I don't think any of Laura Ingraham's bosses are watching her show. She doesn't generate any revenue. She's only there because if they fire her, that means liberals were right, and they cannot allow that. So
I've got a
she's
different
there
question
as a totem, right?
Who is her boss?
I assume the suits upstairs at Fox have something to do with signing her paycheck. But I don't think they're watching her show or even care. They moved her to 7.
Yeah.
You know, they've given her a bad slot. And but last night she decided to talk about Ohio and the Ohio vote this week, which was, as I say, 65-35 pretty much in favor of no Republicans. You don't get to take away our ability to govern ourselves.
Right.
And, you know, the Republican whining about this, we didn't have time to, when they scheduled the vote in August. But Laura Ingraham wants Republicans to brag about the tremendous accomplishment since the Civil War of ending abortion in America.
Right.
We should be bragging about this, people. This is a wonderful accomplishment. And the Republican Party before now lied to us. We were always anti-abortion, and they took advantage of that and pretended like they could continue on with Roe v. Wade. Well, we showed them, blah, blah, blah. The Chiron on her show said, liberal media takes a victory lap in Ohio. Not voters win.
Right.
Not Democrats turn out.
Right.
We don't exist as voters. No. Because if we exist as voters, Fox has to acknowledge that it's 65% of Ohio that voted this way. And they have to admit that some of those voters were Republicans.
Yeah.
And so
can't happen.
And they have to admit that Republicans like Laura Ingraham get abortions all the time.
Well, and they have to admit that everything Republicans do is because they are a minority desperately
They're a minority
trying to hang on to power.
party desperately trying to destroy democracy so they can run the country. Right. Yes, because if everybody votes equally, if everyone goes to the ballot box and votes, one person, one vote, they lose.
They lose everything. Right.
Everything. All the time. And so, her Chiron read, liberal media takes a victory lap in Ohio. Yeah. Not anything about voters. No. She didn't mention the numbers. She didn't mention the votes. She didn't mention Democratic organizing. She didn't even mention the excuses they were making. She said, no, we need to go on the offense. And everyone on social media was like, yeah, Laura, go for it. Go ahead, Republicans. Listen to Laura Ingraham. She's telling you to go for it. Brag about how you're anti-women's bodily autonomy and see how that works out for you.
Well, to be fair, and I accept that, and in the spirit in which it was given, there was an episode of our podcast not very long ago in which I talked about the intelligence squared debate.
Yes, you did.
It was between Mickey Edwards and David Brooks on one side, Laura Ingraham and Ralph Reed on the other. And Laura Ingraham, to her, it horrified me to write this sentence that she was right. Was it
Ann Coulter or Laura Ingraham?
No, it was Laura Ingraham. It was Laura Ingraham and Ralph Reed.
Okay.
Like two more degenerate scumbags on the right you could not find. And of course, it was all conservatives. So like, we're not here to attack each other. We all like each other. We're all friends. And it was, just to repeat myself slightly, the David Brooks side of seizing the center. We should seize the center was on its back foot the whole time because Laura Ingraham and Ralph Reed were very clear. Fuck the center. No, there are things we believe. And Democrats are monsters. And seating the squishy center is an asshole thing to do. So forget about it. And she was right. The whole idea of Republicans leaning into their obvious racism and obvious xenophobia and obvious paranoia is how Donald Trump got elected. So you know what? There's merit in what she says in strictly electoral terms. This is what works for them. And the idea that we're going to pretend that this doesn't work or we should be wishy-washy about it, she's just being true to her awful, awful, awful self.
Yeah. Yep. Driftglass, I shouldn't ask this question.
No, you shouldn't. No, don't do it. Don't do it.
Would you please catch us up with Bari Weiss?
Yeah. Well, he was a singer. He sang a lot of very, very...
No, not Barry White. Love you, baby.
I was going to do my Barry White imitation, and that's just stupid on so many
that'll
levels.
Stop the whole podcast.
Yeah.
That'll just stop it cold.
That's right. I don't have the backup music, and...
Because then we'll have to go on the couch, Driftglass, and it'll be Professional Left After Dark.
After Dark. And that's subscription only. So no, you can't have that. Yeah.
We've been married for 12 years, folks.
We have.
We've raised 3 kids together.
This is Bari Weiss, who used to be New York Times editor on the editorial page. And her opinion used to matter. Why she was ever given that job, I have no idea. But she has fallen on hard times, and she led the intellectual dark web anti-woke hysteria in the elite apartments and condominiums in Upper West Side of New York. And she finally ended up where she belonged, I suppose, starting her own fucking college, which I call the College of Advanced Anti-Woke Puppetry, because it's full of people who are just loudmouth assholes who are concerned that freedom of speech is being killed by liberals in America. And, and of course it's been off the radar for a while because it sucks and nobody wants to go there.
Would it be wrong of me, Driftglass, to consider Bari Weiss the Eileen Cannon of New York Times op-ed writers?
It would not, Blue Gal. It would not. Again, how she ever got that job?
That's exactly what I'm thinking. It's like this completely incompetent person who has no experience.
Yes.
But we'll fill this slot somehow.
Right.
And so just like Judge Cannon, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll do what my bosses tell me to do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work out so well when they're exposed to actual public criticism because they're terrible.
Yeah. I wish sunshine were a cure for what ails the nurse on the .NET page, but it isn't. Because she has
going in our best of.
Yeah. She has opened her college in a very sunny area in Austin, Texas.
Oh, yeah.
And the Austin Monthly has the goods. So I'm just going to read a little bit about what has been happening down at the Anti-Woke Puppetry School.
Waving to all of our listeners in Austin, Texas.
Hey, guys. We love you. I'm sorry you're stuck in that place. I'm sorry that place is what it is. Hopefully we get back to the Ann Richards, Texas that we all used to love. Yep. The headline of the article is how the so-called University of Austin is faring nearly 2 years after conception. Is the controversial anti-woke school majoring in anything other than grandstanding? So you can hear in the headline kind of
I know the answer to that one.
Yeah. Well, my short answer is no. This is who they are. This is just the first paragraph. And when I started reading this, I go, oh, I have to read this on the podcast because it's so delicious. And it's the kind of writing about these people suck and here's why that you just don't hear in any publication in the mainstream about these people. They all are terrified of being called, cancel culture Nazis and being swarmed by, I don't know, the PragerU graduates or something. So this is the first paragraph. Imagined into existence in November of 2021 by conservative journalist, thank God for calling her conservative, Bari Weiss, the so-called University of Austin was predicated on the idea that colleges are broken because they aren't open forums for discussion. The school has now held 2 summer seminars and hopes to admit its first undergraduates in class in the fall of 2024. And the article just graded various parts of the school. Number 1, location, gave it an F. Number 2, accreditation, gave it an F. And it notes that if you read the fine print carefully, you'll notice that it usually refers to itself as UATX, strategically avoiding that U word, that university word. That's because you can't call yourself a university in Texas unless you are one, which it isn't. It can't accredit anyone, so you can't get grades that mean anything. Course offerings. Course offerings are given a C- because it's basically boring meh stuff with spicy titles and subject matter that is, desperately kept out of the schools around the world. These are forbidden subjects, which are actually being discussed in actual universities all over the world. So they gave her a C. So faculty, they gave him a C, a gentleman's C, which might be dropping considering that famed Harvard professor Steven Pinker resigned from the advisory board almost immediately after it was created. And he's not alone. More recently, board member and evolutionary biologist Heather Heying departed in December of 22 after suggesting that the school was simply too obsessed with being, say it with me now, Blue Gal, anti-woke.
Anti-woke.
Because that's all they are interested in. And diversity, the last grade they gave it was a D+. Quote, it begins to look less like a learning institution and more like an intellectual Ponzi scheme where the buy-in is railing against wokeism, unquote. Yeah, that sounds just about right. So,
where did she get funding for this project?
From people with large amounts of money.
Yeah, I think it was the U'Lines, wasn't it? Somebody like that.
The U'Lines or Clarence Thomas's buddy or somebody like either. I could look it up, but that would delay our podcast.
Don't bother. But
the point being, there is, and always has been, and always will be, a shit ton of money for people like this to do crazy, stupid, awful Ponzi scheme bullshit like this because there's a lot of billionaires who want to believe that the world is a certain way when it isn't and are willing to pay people to create Potemkin institutions that will repeat back to them the fairy tales they wish to believe. In some cases, it's just called the New York Times op-ed page. Anyway, that's the update from the field. I'm sure they're doing fine. I don't think they're going to lose any money because there's always money in the banana stand for bullshit like this.
For right-wing bullshit like this for some reason, we need to get a little bit personal here, and I hope people will bear with me. I hate talking about my own personal health. I really do. And it's funny because women my age, I have noticed when I am in groups of women my age, often that's all they want to talk about is, who's had surgery and who's had this and what kind of condition do they have and so forth. And if it's not their health, it's somebody else's. And it's annoying to me. And I will tell you that I don't know whether it's just my wiring or connected to my faith or what it is, but there's something about talking about personal health matters that just is itching powder to me. I don't like to do it, but I love talking about healthcare policy.
Right.
and when they intersect as they have this week, I think it's important to talk about healthcare policy. So I'm going to tell all of you that I have been diagnosed with lymphedema, which is a failure of the lymph nodes to drain fluid. In my case, from my legs. I have started treatment. I am responding amazingly well to treatment. I'm very grateful. I'm probably going to have to do a GoFundMe this fall because the copays per session are $40, which I don't have. But I'll let you know about that. You guys have always responded really well when there's a specific need that we have for funding for something very specific. This is that. And I'm doing fine. I want everybody to know I'm doing fine. I'm responding to treatment. I feel very positive about what's going on. It's like, oh, we found out what this is.
Yeah.
We found out why my ankles and legs have swollen up and the treatment is working. So it's like, this is great. Lymphedema is a condition that often follows breast cancer treatment, which I have not had breast cancer. So that it's not related to anything. This is inherited for me. My mother had it. I'm aware of how I got this. But the healthcare policy part of it is really interesting. Lymphedema treatment, part of lymphedema treatment is compression. And what they do is they wrap the affected limb that is swelling and getting fluid buildup in basically ACE bandages, but a special kind of ACE bandage and foam and so forth, and compress it. It's like compression socks, but on steroids. They tightly wrap it and get that fluid pumping through that limb. As I said, breast cancer patients often get lymphedema in their arms and have to have wraps on their arms, which, that's got to be very difficult. So those wraps are expensive because everything in healthcare is expensive in America. Mm-hmm. And the way that insurance, this is getting into the weeds a little bit, but it's important. The way that insurance bills for things, there are medical devices that last a long time, like hearing aids, walkers, wheelchairs. Mm-hmm. And insurance has a category for paying for those kind of things. Then there are temporary things like bandages and sharps where you have to give yourself an injection. Mm-hmm. Those patches for monitoring your blood sugar, that you dispose of every couple of weeks. Those are considered disposable items, and there's a category for those. These bandages last for about 6 months, and then you have to replace them because they lose their elasticity, these lymphedema bandages. And for some reason, that has been in no man's land in terms of billing for insurance. There's no category for a product that doesn't last a year or 2 years and then you have to replace it or is disposable.
So it's a medical coding issue.
It's a medical coding issue.
Right.
Congress has passed the Lymphedema Coverage Act, which goes into effect in January of 2024.
Oh, geez.
Uh-huh. Yay! And of course, the only people that this bill directly affects are Medicare and Medicaid patients.
Right.
But a lot of insurance companies base their coverage on that because it's easier. So you may see more improvement. Some states, like Illinois, have already included lymphedema as part of, yes, we require insurance companies selling insurance in Illinois to cover that. I know that they've required that because I went and looked at the fine print in our insurance policy, which is an Obamacare policy, and lymphedema is listed by name in the policy. So, and Yay. I want to give a shout out to our Congresswoman, not our personal Congresswoman, who's Nikki Budzinski, but our Illinois Congresswoman, Jan Schakowsky.
Yes.
Because she has been fighting for lymphedema coverage. Mm-hmm. And here's the sad part. She introduced a bill to cover lymphedema in 2019. Mm-hmm. It passed this year. It was passed as part of the medical drug bill, the big omnibus drug bill.
That lowered insulin costs and so forth.
Yes, that lowered insulin costs.
Right.
She was able to get that passed. But she has been fighting for this for 4 years for cancer patients. I mean, this is a thing that affects breast cancer, which is something that no congresswoman is going to say, no congressperson is going to say, I'm against breast cancer coverage.
Right. No. Although, I don't know.
But here's an article I found, and I'm sorry I didn't print out where it was from, but the title of it is When a Majority is Not Enough to Get a Bill Passed. Uh-huh. Consider the legislation to get, it's written by Michael Tadelbaum from February 2020. Consider legislation to get Medicare coverage for a condition called lymphedema, which causes fluid retention and swollen tissues when the lymphatic system is damaged or blocked. A common side effect for cancer patients, especially breast cancer survivors, whose lymph nodes are often harmed or even removed. An estimated 1.5 million to 3 million Medicare beneficiaries suffer from the disease, according to Illinois Democrat Jan Schakowsky, who sponsored a House bill in 2019. For many, treatment requires special compression garments that can cost from $80 to $1,000 and then need replacement every 6 months. Mm-hmm. Without adequate treatment, it can be bad. Okay, I'm not going to go into all the details. The treatments are covered by Veterans Affairs, TRICARE, many commercial insurers, and as part of their Medicaid programs, 44 states and the District of Columbia. But it's not covered by Medicare until January of this coming year.
Mm-hmm.
Because Jan Schakowsky is somebody who doesn't let stuff go.
Right. My former congressperson.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And she's a firebrand and a powerhouse, and we love her. This bill of hers had 374 co-sponsors. in the House of Representatives.
Mm-hmm.
It had 70 sponsors in the Senate. So it had enough votes to pass.
Uh-huh.
In Congress, this is the article again, in Congress, despite significant support among members, the leadership felt that expanding the definitions for one disease would create a precedent for others.
Oh, no. Other people might be covered for things,
I know.
too?
Seriously,
Oh,
someone
no.
else with a disease might decide that they want coverage, too.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. It boiled down to money and the worry that we would be opening a Pandora's box for other diseases.
Imagine writing a sentence like that. Imagine thinking a sentence like that.
That's not the author. He's quoting someone.
Oh, I know. But that's obscene. That's just
it's obscene. It's obscene. And that, like I said, I hate talking about my medical conditions. I just hate it. But I felt, as I was doing research about my own situation, I came across this and I thought, nope, damn it, this is podcastable. We have to talk about this.
Because it really is that Venn diagram between personal and political.
Yep, between personal and political. The personal is political nearly all the time. So again, let me state for the record, I am fine. And I have this amazing man in my life. I don't know if you've met him, but he's fabulous.
Who the hell are you talking about?
He's putting me on the Mediterranean diet and making delicious, delicious food for me to eat. And he makes sure that I take my pills in the morning, and he loves me, and I love him.
That's all true.
His name is Driftglass.
There's one other person who's delighted by this situation, other than
our vegan child.
Like, I gave her the reward. I gave her the honor of pouring out the last of the milk in this house.
Honestly,
and she was like, "This is great." And she just claps her hands. Okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna work out a menu. And last night I made vegan pesto.
Yep, vegan pesto.
It's really good. It's
delicious.
It took a little while, and I have to modify it a little bit, but
we're gonna make some changes. But and this is, I'm not on the Mediterranean diet because of a brand name or anything like that, but eating that way is recommended for this condition.
Yes.
Lower the sugar, lower the white flour, and increase the healthy fats and make it as plant-based as possible. And, vegan daughter is a little bit of a bossy pants anyway.
Yes.
So she was just thrilled that she now has my physical therapist in her corner.
Yeah. Shut up. We're doing it this way.
We're doing it this way. Here's the list. I have a list.
And honestly, doing a little more adventurous stuff in the kitchen, although it takes considerably more time. There are times when it's a blessing to be the hell away from the blogosphere and Twitter and politics and just sitting
playing
in the kitchen,
with food. Yes,
playing with food, cutting things up, thinking things through, trying to taste things.
Don't lie, Driftglass. You listen to Never Trumper podcasts while you're doing that.
I do, and then you know what? Everything tastes bitter. Everything tastes bitter. Anyway, he's a wonderful cook, and the food is delicious.
Yeah. I have never eaten better than I'm eating this week. And I'm fine. I don't want anyone to worry about me at all because I'm fine. So I just hate talking about medical stuff.
Oh, I know. And believe me, having hung out with the old, I'm old too, but with the olds, it is really a round robin of what medication you're taking and what hurts today and what surgeries. And you know what? All of that applies to me and applies to us. I just don't want to talk about it. I just don't think it's like, I don't think that's conversational stuff. It just never occurred to me. Like, now the exception is Jaws when you're showing your scars,
Yeah.
Like, it's Mary Jane. She broke my heart. Okay. I can be down with that. But really, I'm not a medical condition.
And I'm not complaining about anyone else sharing what they want to share with us about their lives. It's really just about me and how I can't do it. So
you know what
all right.
You should do? No, you should get down to Austin, Texas, and try to be a visiting professor saying, "I want to talk about my medical condition. I'm being canceled by my culture," and then you could do a whole thing down there with that. Anyway, that's just a callback, gal.
Let's just do a news roundup now,
All right.
Class.
You want to go first, or you want me to go first?
You go first.
All right. Well, as everyone knows by now, Ohio voters rejected that Republican-backed ballot measure to raise the threshold to amend the state's constitution ahead of a November referendum on whether to enshrine abortion rights in the state constitution. And let me just say, in summary, voters figured out the sort of double reverse bullshit that was going on here that they had to vote against. So, voters sometimes they figure shit out, especially when there's a lot of good publicity and a lot of people explaining very clearly what the stakes are and why things are the way they are. And I summarized this in 7 headlines. This is from NPR. Ohio's issue 1 voted down in Tuesday's special election, right? That's baloney. That's Balan stuff. Okay. New York Times, takeaways from Ohio's vote on abortion and issue 1. Fine. The Hill, GOP alarms go off after Ohio abortion vote. Yeah, okay, right. CNN, 4 takeaways from abortion rights advocates, Ohio win. 538, a special election in Ohio shows voters still care about abortion. Yeah, they still care about abortion. Yeah, this shocked them, apparently. And Fox, GOP burden in 2024 will be navigating the issue of abortion. Noel Nickpour, GOP strategist and fundraiser, joins Fox News' Arthel Neville to break down how the issue of abortion and the economy will shape the 2024 election on Fox presidential election on Fox News Live, which I will never, ever watch. Finally, the Columbus Dispatch. Matt Huffman's twisted defense of issue 1 lies is straight from the Fox News playbook. That is the right headline. Among all these, and the ones celebrating victory and the ones patting Ohio on the back, that is straight fucking Fox News nonsense, and you should say that in the headline. Congratulations, Columbus Dispatch.
Columbus Dispatch got it right. From Rolling Stone, Trump pushes total lie about Georgia prosecutor sleeping with gang member. Because he's an asshole.
So, really, this is a lawsuit. This is a straight-up defamation lawsuit.
Defamation lawsuit. The former president basically accused Fani Willis, who was investigating his 2020 election meddling, of having a, quote, an affair with a, quote, gang member.
Yeah.
Fani Willis sends an email to her staff saying, quote, and this is shorter Fani out Willis, this is my words, not her quote, but ignore the whining of a criminal.
Yeah. And I can't imagine the cataract of racist bullshit that's landing in her email inbox.
Oh my God. The
black woman prosecuting Donald Trump and him just going to town on her every time.
Stochastic terrorism against her personally. Yep.
This week, speaking of black women, this week, Ted Cruz used his podcast to attack the judge overseeing Trump's case, calling her far left and pointing out that she was appointed by Barack Obama. What he did not mention was that he also voted to confirm her in 2014.
As did 94 of his colleagues. Yes.
Yeah, that's weird. Weird how that works, isn't it?
I want you to do the next one, Driftglass.
Okay, here's a riddle from the old Batman TV show. If you're not an old, you won't know this. What is always coming but never arrives? Just imagine Frank Gorshin giggling when he says this. The answer is tomorrow. But judges, because tomorrow is always coming, but it never gets here. Because when it gets here, it's today. So that's the answer to the riddle. But the judges would also have accepted James Comer's groundbreaking evidence. Because it's always on the horizon. It's always almost here, but it never shows up. And here is James Comer on Fox News, because who else is going to put a camera on that man? I can tell you with confidence, there's a whole lot more evidence out there that would prove Joe Biden has committed crimes, more crimes, than are Donald Trump's committing crimes. That is his quote. I'm not stumbling. That's what he really said. Of course, he can tell you that with confidence because that's what con men do.
Kayleigh McEnany today on the 5 Driftglass said it doesn't matter if Joe Biden committed any crimes. He's still corrupt.
That's right. The whole fact thing, please. Yeah.
From Axios, which, by the way, Axios says it's a 50-50 country, Driftglass.
Yeah, I heard them say that.
Joe Manchin says he's thinking seriously about dropping his affiliation with the Democratic Party. Guess what he's going to do, Driftglass? He's going to become independent.
I was waiting. That's why I put it in here, you know?
He's an independent now. He's going to be an independent. The brand. I guess he means the Democratic brand?
The D and R, he said. The D and R.
Oh,
brand.
The D and R brands have become so bad.
Yeah, both of them.
I'm an independent.
And you know who else has been thinking about him leaving the Democratic Party? Me. Like, now, Brantley Starr, who names their child Brantley, far-right federal judge who is also the nephew of infamous and now dead Whitewater liar Ken Starr, and who was appointed by Donald Trump, has ordered 3 lawyers for Southwest Airlines to undergo, quote, religious liberty training, unquote, by Alliance Defending Freedom, which is a far-right, anti-constitutional, anti-abortion group. Cool.
Florida Governor Ron Pudding Fingers DeSantis suspended a second elected state attorney. Guess which color she is?
Oh, let me scratch my
saying
head.
she was clearly and fundamentally derelict in her duties. DeSantis suspended Monique Worrell, claiming she systematically under-prosecuted criminals in her jurisdiction in 3 cases, which he said constituted both neglect of duty and incompetence. Worrell called the move a political hit job by a weak dictator. I think she won that round.
Yeah.
Accusing DeSantis of peddling a false narrative and engaging in political gamesmanship. She was elected to that office.
She was elected. This reminds me of the Tennessee legislature that tossed out
exactly.
the 2 young black men.
You just made her a celebrity.
Yeah. Congratulations, Rhonda. This week, the same asshole, Ron DeSantis, fired his campaign manager and restructured, that's a lovely word for it, his presidential campaign operations for the 3rd time in less than a month as he continues spiraling into the ground against Trump in national and statewide polling for the Republican nomination. Good luck on the way to the exit, Ron.
Another Pudding Fingers Florida story, this one from the Tampa Bay Times. Florida schools are now censoring Shakespeare for Ron DeSantis.
Jesus.
English teachers in Hillsborough County are preparing lessons for the new school year with only excerpts from William Shakespeare's works. Students will be assigned pages from the classics, which might include Macbeth, Hamlet, and the time-honored teen favorite Romeo and Juliet. But if they want to read them in their entirety, they will have to do it on their own time.
Yeah.
Florida isn't interested in Shakespeare.
No, just parts of it. There's a lot in Shakespeare I would definitely like to teach in great depth to a Florida high school class, specifically like Macbeth.
I was thinking Coriolanus, but...
Yeah. Oh, Richard III.
Oh, is this Pudding? No, wait.
No. Ron DeSantis looks out his window and Burnham Woods is moving against him. Oh, shit. I should have read all the way to the end. Supreme Court rent-a-justice Clarence Thomas took 38 billionaire-funded vacations. 38. And the reason
38 that ProPublica could find so far.
Yeah. And this is...
And it's real interesting that one of the right-wingers in that painting that has Clarence Thomas and Leonard Leo in it, that's over at, the billionaire's house. One of the guys in that painting came out on Twitter with a thread attacking ProPublica.
Yeah.
Tweet after tweet after tweet about how ProPublica is, he didn't say Soros funded, but he went all the way there with left-wing hit job, blah, blah, blah. This was a day and a half before this story came out.
Well, yeah, you got to get out there early.
You got to jump ahead of it, right? Right.
Well, and let me read you well, you got the basics there. Basically, it's ProPublica reported the broadest look yet at Clarence Thomas's luxury travel, bankrolled by wealthy friends, and reveals private jet, helicopter rides, and VOP sporting event tickets. The new report is the broadest look yet at how Thomas's social circle has funded, with limited disclosure to the public, a regular stream of extravagant excursions and events since he became a Supreme Court justice. These costly trips and travel perks often went unreported on the justice's financial disclosure forms, ProPublica said in the investigation. Jeremy Fogel, a former judge who for years reviewed lower court judges' financial disclosures, told ProPublica that the amount of undisclosed gifts Thomas received is unlike anything he has ever seen. In my career, I don't remember ever seeing this degree of largesse given to anybody, said Fogel. It is unprecedented. And the way conservative media is trying to cope with it is, what about Sonia Sotomayor, huh? What about Sonia Sotomayor? And she took trips. Didn't she take trips? Here's a trip she took. Yes. Apparently she took a trip to read books to school children because they didn't read all the way to the end of the thing.
She donated her time to read to school children?
Yeah. Apparently that's what happened. You check me if I'm wrong. But really, the first thing that occurs to these people is not, holy shit, Clarence Thomas is a bought and paid for whore. Maybe
he's
we should
go. Let's clean up our act and get him behind us. Yes.
Remember, if you're a conservative, you can only be wrong in one way, and that's you weren't conservative enough. So it's not Clarence Thomas that's the problem. It's look over there at the woman of color over there. Look at that Sonia lady. Look what she's doing. Why won't the liberals enforce the rules across the board? And then make it the story about how liberals are hypocrites. No, Clarence Thomas is a bought and paid for whore. Everybody knows it. John Roberts sure as hell knows it. And clearly he doesn't care. He doesn't care. Or he can't control his court. Either way, the Supreme Court has lost the respect that it once had and earned every little bit of the loss of respect it now has.
The other thing that's funny about this story is how much of what ProPublica is reporting is documented in Ginny Thomas's social media photographs.
She's so helpful.
Here we are on the yacht.
You're so helpful. Well, you gotta Instagram your food to let people know who you're eating with and how famous they are.
GOP donor Anton Lazaro, and there's a picture of him with Trump, of course.
Yes.
Sentenced to 21 years for sex trafficking minors in Minnesota. That's all I want to say about that. It's so disgusting.
It is. Donald Trump's interview with Eric Bolling on Newsmax. Let's take a look at that sentence for a second. Eric Bolling on Newsmax. Eric Bolling has fallen down and hit every limb on the crashing your career to the ground tree until he landed at fucking Newsmax. And that's where he's going to spend the rest of his life. This interview, however, had a surprising ending. A disclaimer. Former President Trump repeated his big lie that the election was rigged and stolen and blah, 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 blah. And after the interview, Eric Bolling returned to the camera like he was in a hostage video and said the following disclaimer. All right, folks, now just to note, Newsmax has accepted the election results as legal and final. Now, why would he do that? Well, because Newsmax has a huge incentive to add this caveat for its audiences because it already faces a $1.6 billion defamation suit from Dominion Voting Systems alleging that the network's coverage about the company was untrue. Also from that long and deranged interview, Donald Trump called Jack Smith, quote, a sick puppy, unquote, and said, quote, I'm allowed to do everything, unquote.
I think this is, again, I keep going back to the Alex Jones court case.
Right.
They don't understand that you can't try a Democrat on Fox. You can just put it on Fox and that means he's guilty, right?
Right.
And that when you put a Republican under oath in court to charge him with a crime and send him to prison, that this GOP donor is going to prison for 21 years.
Yes. To big boy jail.
Because he trafficked teenagers.
Yes.
That's real. Going on Fox and saying, I can do anything, or going on Newsmax and saying, I can do anything. That's the law. They really don't understand. Trump doesn't understand.
This is the thing. I think, and I have no proof of this. This is just me intuitively understanding the base and getting it right all the time because that's what we do. There is this enormous amount of projection because they spent 8 years talking about Barack Obama. Again, Barack Obama's gone now, disappeared. Barack Obama's a tyrant. Barack Obama's a monster. He's a dictator. He's a jackbooted thug. We're on the road to fascism with Barack Obama because he thinks he can do anything. He's governing through executive orders. He thinks he's some sort of... He's czars.
Czars.
He's a king. They're czars. And they baked it into their heads that Barack Obama could get away with anything because they believed all the lies they told themselves about him. So when they took office, they're like, well, now I'm the king. Now I can get away with anything because that's the privilege of this office. I can do anything I want and get away with it because everybody who's in this seat is a king because Barack Obama was an emperor and now I'm in charge. And they really fucking believe that shit. And when gravity reasserts itself and people start going to jail, that's when Trump and his inner circle become hysterical because they don't understand how is it I'm going. You can't charge me. When I do it, it's legit. This is Nixon shit. When the president does it, it's not illegal.
Right.
And they've internalized that to the point where they can't stop doing it. Anyway. Special
counsel Jack Smith, by the way, has announced a proposed trial date for the January 6th trial of January 2nd. He should have said January 6th.
He should have.
But January 2nd, and it's going to be a 6-week trial, and he's already going to have the jury in place by January. So, That's lickety split quick in
Happy New Year, Blue Gal. Yeah, Happy New Year.
Trump's going to get his speedy trial on that one. Jack Smith also obtained a search warrant for Trump's Twitter account earlier this year as part of the investigation into his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. That Jack Smith always has a surprise around the corner. I've noticed.
Sneaky. He's sneaky.
According to a newly unsealed court filing, Twitter was forced to hand over the records and pay $350,000 for defying a judge's deadline to comply with a Justice Department search warrant. And if you read the timeline of what happened and how Twitter's attorney didn't know 2 days before this was due that anything, they don't have any legal staff left. They don't have any staff left.
No, they got rid of everybody.
Anyone who was supposed to be taking care of these judicial subpoena type requests at Twitter wasn't there. Elon had fired them. The filing also reveals that the special counsel obtained a non-disclosure order which prohibited Twitter from disclosing the existence or contents of the search warrant to any person. Prosecutors argued that if Trump learned about the warrant, it would seriously jeopardize the ongoing investigation by giving him an opportunity to destroy evidence, change patterns of behavior, or notify Confederates. Now, this is the part that to me is interesting. Judge Beryl Howell also found reason to believe that Trump might flee prosecution if he was told about the search warrant.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Beryl Howell said, you need to get the Twitter DMs and the Twitter drafts, which Keith Olbermann has talked about, that everybody's saying, oh, it's the DMs. It's not, everybody can see Trump's tweets, right?
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Jack Smith was able to show the judge something in Donald Trump's documentation that indicated that in Trump's DMs or drafts, a crime was being committed. Or a crime was being revealed.
Mm-hmm. So bad.
That this warrant, because judges don't just give out warrants.
No, they don't.
So there was proof that Jack Smith had to indicate that it was worth looking at this stuff.
Yeah.
And the judge said, yeah, you're right. You need to be able to look at this stuff, and Trump needs to be hidden. It needs to be hidden from him that you're looking at it.
Because he's
going to flip out.
Yeah,
he might even flee the country if he knows you're looking at this stuff. I don't think it has been illustrated in the media just how bad this stuff might be. That's all.
Well, and an internal Trump campaign memo, because it all's coming out. It's all leaking out. An internal,
as the Bible says, there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed.
Right. You can throw a rock and hide your hand, but eventually the man's going to get you. I'm sorry, I'm quoting Johnny Cash now, not the Bible. So it's practically the same thing. An internal Trump campaign memo from late 2020 detailed their plan to subvert the Electoral College process and install fake pro-Trump electors in multiple states to overturn the election. The 6-page previously unreleased memo by lawyer Kenneth Cheesebro was referred to as the, quote, fraudulent elector memo in last week's special counsel indictment. It really is, here's how we cheat our way back into the White House in black and white and 6 pages in detail.
And my flower blossomed when it was noted that Kenneth Cheesebro worked on Bush v. Gore.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Boom. There's the connection, right?
They want a replay of making as much confusion as possible so it can go before the Supreme Court.
Yeah, where there's a bunch of justices
just waiting. 3 people waiting to say yes to Donald Trump. Yeah.
And 3 more who are terrified to say otherwise.
Yes, exactly. Because Alito will out them.
Right.
From Business Insider, a veteran FBI agent told Congress that investigations into Giuliani and other Trump allies were suppressed. Again, everything on the right is projection. Apparently, Fox News employees cannot do a story on the air without mentioning Hunter Biden. Now.
Yeah, yes. He's punctuation at this point. Hunter Biden.
Jesse Waters had someone on last night talking about, isn't it terrible that Joe Biden gave an interview to the Weather Channel?
Yeah. Yep.
And it must be, and they were laughing when they were saying it, like these 2 frat boys were talking, ha ha ha. But it was, what if it's a secret code to Joe Biden's underground, connections and Hunter Biden's underground connections, because, Hunter Biden's business partners said that all he ever talked about with Biden was the weather.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, look at this. Biden's on the Weather Channel. Get it?
Get it? You get it? You just, Glenn Beck's chalkboard is never more than 3 feet away from these people.
I think that's exactly right. Their ratings are down, by the way. Go check out Media Matters. Media Matters has a whole thing about how Fox News's ratings have really, really tanked since they fired Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, the drug isn't there anymore.
Yeah, you fired the circus clown from the circus. Yeah. I mean,
Yep. So this is projection. Investigations into Giuliani and other Trump allies were suppressed during the Trump administration.
Mm-hmm.
The FBI counterintelligence agent said his supervisor told him to stop investigating Rudy Giuliani and to cut off contact with any sources who reported on corruption by associates of former President Donald Trump, according to a whistleblower complaint obtained by Insider. The agent, who served 14 years as a special agent to the Bureau, including a long stint in Russia-focused counterintelligence, claimed in a 22-page statement that his bosses interfered with his work in a highly suspicious suppression of investigations and intelligence gathering aimed at protecting certain politically active figures and possibly also FBI agents who were connected to Russian and Ukrainian oligarchs. Those figures, the statement claims, explicitly included anyone in the White House and any former or current associates of President Trump. Insider is withholding the name of the whistleblower because he has made claims about retaliation from the FBI, where he remains an employee, and because he is now seeking whistleblower protections from Congress.
Mm-hmm.
It is highly unfortunate that this statement wound up being leaked and published, said Scott Horton, an attorney representing the whistleblower. We're in the preliminary stages of a confidential process. I'm unable to make any other comments. So it's going to be interesting to see, again, how that unfolds.
And everything we've talked about today, a lot of it in the news has been from Business Insider or ProPublica or other sources of original reporting, actual journalism, as rare as it is. And I want to talk for a minute about local news, our local news. I was at a meeting in the pre-dawn hours with a bunch of civic leaders and business owners and local citizens. And I talked to an alderwoman after the meeting. We're on a first name basis. And I heard about this job site disaster in Springfield. A bunch of Mexican workers who don't speak English were employed under the supervision of some person to tear down a building or apartment building or whatever it is that was full of asbestos, apparently.
Wow.
There was no asbestos abatement. There was no consciousness of what they were doing. There was nobody on the site to do a translation from English to Spanish. These people pulled a bunch of asbestos out, knowing or not knowing what it was, put it in dumpsters in the neighborhoods, and the whole job site is now closed down.
They put asbestos in an open dumpster.
An open dumpster in the neighborhood. So now the neighborhood is screwed, the area, and now you have to bring in experts, and now come the lawsuits, et cetera, et cetera. The only way, and I know what goes on in Springfield. I'm not naive. I do pay attention to what's going on in my city, in my town. Only way I knew about it was the alderman told me.
Mm-hmm.
And this was,
and you had access to the alderman because you were at a meeting, local community organizing meeting.
Right. And and a mayor of an adjacent community is there. You find out all the good stuff. But everybody in the meeting who spoke, with almost without exception, said the following. Thank goodness for organizations like this that talk about issues like this, because otherwise we would never know about this stuff. And they decided like 4 or 5 things that were going on. It's because, and everyone agreed, it's because the local newspaper is shit. The local newspaper, which was a rag already, was bought by Gatehouse and has been stripped down to nothing but obituaries and sports reports. And reports from Rockford, Illinois, for some reason. The local radio stations are a shadow of what they once were, and they were never that great. The only liberal voice on the air is now gone. I saw him in the supermarket 2 days ago. I said, I don't want to interrupt. I miss you terribly on the radio. And he said, thank you, and went about shopping for Brussels sprouts. But there is no local news anymore. Sinclair owns the local stations, or it's Fox, and most of it's sports and weather. And
but even weather, you thank God that, they haven't taken the National Weather Service away yet.
Exactly. Yeah. Because that's how we find out.
Because we would not get notifications about evacuating if we had to.
from the local news. And these are business owners, elected officials, citizens, some liberal troublemakers like myself, all agree. All of them are like, this is a disaster. This not just this job site thing, but the fact that there are no reporters anymore on the beat for anything anymore. There's one guy who does like state capitol news. There used to be a horde of reporters at the state capitol because, they passed laws and stuff. And there used to be job shadowing, and there used to be internships and a whole bunch of a whole infrastructure of journalism. All of that is gone. The only local newspaper, daily newspaper, as I said, is a rag. It's nothing. It's not worth the paper it's printed on. There's a weekly that still does investigative reporting and so forth on beekeeping and marijuana entrepreneurship and transgender issues.
Yeah. They did a big thing on that. Yeah.
But it is wildly insufficient. And as I said, local radio sucks and local television is garbage. And this is not just us. It's all around the country. And this is what happens.
All over the country, yeah.
This is what happens when a large corporation, called Gatehouse in this case, bought the local paper with the intention of gutting it for parts, stripping it down, and dumping it. And they've done that all over the country. And I'm very glad there's such a thing as ProPublica. I'm delighted that Business Insider is reporting on stuff like this. I'm delighted by the few reporters we have around town and the people at the who go to like city council meetings and tell us about them. But unless you are tapped in and wired into the right people, unless you talk to these people all the time, you have no idea what's going on in your own community. And that is obscene. That is a goddamn shame. That's about money and power.
And it's a major safety issue when you talk about extreme weather events, and when you talk about asbestos in a dumpster on your street.
Yep. Anyway, I just wanted to add, what we do here at the Professional Left Podcast, I think is kind of important. It's about giving vocabulary to people and context to people, letting them know they're not alone. But nothing beats shoe leather reporting on the local level by decent, people with notepads and infinite energy who will dig and dig and dig and find stuff out. And we don't have that anymore at the capital of Illinois. And that is terrifying.
Yep. I hate to end on that bummer note because it's too bad. But hey, I do want to say that, this whole Trump situation is exhausting. And a lot of people have said that on social media. It's just exhausting. And the sense that he might get away with it is terrifying and debilitating sometimes.
Yep.
And I just want everyone to wake up in the morning with the words, "This too shall pass," on their lips, because it will. And justice will be done in some way. Not all the time in every way, but there will be justice on this particular asshole. It will happen.
And if you need to put a smile on your face and a song in your heart, we can recommend a show called Mrs. Davis.
Mrs. Davis is a good show. Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not going to review it now. On Peacock.
Mrs. Davis on Peacock. We are enjoying that one.
Yes, we are.
Each week, we post to our Facebook page and website an Internet Kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's Internet Kitty is Etta. Etta is 14 years old, and she has seen some things. But she's never seen anything like the Alabama boat brawl.
Damn.
And of course, Etta, and she looks like Grumpy Kitty, but she's a sweet kitty. Etta eats freshly poured pet food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve Pet Store Perfection or Dollar Store Direct, your cats will sit on the kitchen floor and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured.
Freshly poured, oh my Lord, it's freshly poured.
You can visit Etta at our Facebook page or website, and you can send your Internet Kitty, dog, or any other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go Postal Unions. Letter on the air unless you say otherwise. #FiredToJoy. Don't forget our gourmet coffee guideline. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is our job. And we've had a number of new Patreons this week, and we really appreciate that. If that's where you want to go to support both this show and No Fair Remembering stuff, Patreon is a great place to do it. They offer us a lot of support, and we appreciate that. So patreon.com/proleftpodcast is where you go to become a patron, and you can become a patron for as little as $5 a month, and that really does help us a lot. So thank you. Please share our show on social media, and you can give us a review on Apple Podcasts. That also helps us a lot too. If you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen, and thank you for doing that. Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the Internet Kitties are very keenly interested in exactly how the butter cow will be divvied up after the state fair is over.
Let's think about living.
Think about living.
Let's think about loving.
Think about loving.
Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the loving, lovey-dovey.
Lovey-dovey-dovey.
Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
A Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2023 DGBG Productions.